Hello everyone, today we're going to pit two Starlight Nano cameras against one another. Yeah, I finally got my hands on a Starlight version of the Baby Ratel. These two squared off once before, but it wasn't really a fair fight because the Baby Ratel was not Starlight or low lux, however you want to say it. And we've got the Foxeer Toothless 2 Nano over here on the right. As far as the specs go, I've kind of covered those things in previous videos that I did on these cameras. But the one thing that stands out to me is I think there's a typo on the Caddx website. It says that this camera only takes the input voltage of 3.3 volts to 5.5 volts. Whereas on the Toothless 2 Nano, it takes 3.8 to 16 volts. So that's a little bit odd because I suspect that these cameras are probably constructed very, very similar. As a refresher, let's get some weights. But before we do that, I'm going to show you the boxes up close so you can see that they both say Starlight, and a quick look at the printed specs. They both do switch between 4.3 and 16:9, and field of view kind of varies, but they're about the same. Starting off with the Caddx Baby Ratel, we've got just a touch under 5.25 grams. And the Toothless 2 Nano is 5.29 grams, so very, very similar. We could probably account for some of the weight difference with the wired lead length. Being your Starlight, we're going to start at dark. This is not dark dark. This is after sundown. It's about 9:40 at night, but you're going to see in the next section, it's actually all the way dark, like Starlight dark outside, so we can see stars and things of that nature in the sky. Got the opportunity because I wasn't tied up doing family daddy things, and I powered them up and took them outside, and I thought I'd do a quick scan. So the sun is down as far as the National Weather Service is concerned, but it's just not as dark as most of us would associate as full dark. I did finally find a better way to do, not the testing, but for me to be able to operate the testing. I had forgotten that I had these FPV watches. I have two of them, and I took one of those and I mounted it to my board. That way I don't have to keep putting goggles on and off and kind of guess where I'm pointing the cameras as we walk around and we do these various different little lighting tests that I tend to do on these, because I know that a lot of people, especially this time of year in the northern hemisphere, it's getting pretty hot in some areas, and so maybe it's only fly time when it's closer to dark. Of course, in the southern hemisphere, you have the opposite problem. In December or January, you might have extreme hots down there during that time of year, and you might be flying only at nighttime. So it's a good opportunity for those people that are affected by strong heat or otherwise just like to fly at night to get a chance to look at these cameras and kind of do a side-by-side comparison, whereas after dark, this might simulate maybe parking lot sort of lighting conditions. I've never flown in a parking lot, so I can't really say for certain, but Again, I had the opportunity, so I took it out. These are both reset back to factory defaults. I find typically when I do my testing, as far as the scenes go that these cameras all come with, that auto or color is the best setting, at least in my vision. I'm sure there are specific times where the other settings might come to play, but when it comes to doing these sort of in the nature sort of environmental testing, auto or color is usually what appears best to me. So that's what these are set to. And you'll notice that the Foxeer has the OSD, the camera OSD, on screen by default, whereas the Caddx Baby Ratel by default does not have the OSD on screen. I thought that was a bit of an interesting take. You know, companies making different choices about what they have on screen and what they don't have on screen. I think that's a pretty good view of the kind of dusk setting, the dusk view, or just before dark. Let's jump to full dark. Okay, here we are. It's full dark finally. You'll see some stars. As I point the camera to the right, you'll see I pointed up to the sky and I kind of point out some stars. But this is all the way dark. This is as dark as the neighborhood gets, which our neighborhood, as I've said many, many times before, it's pretty dark. We don't have any street lights. All we have is house lights. The HOA or Homeowners Association makes you have a lamp light in your yard that's required. Pretty much all the houses in the neighborhood was built back in the 80s, and they all have it anyway. So unless somebody wanted to take it out, they would have it in there. Pointed at the sky. I always like how the clouds look through these cameras at nighttime. So if you have a little bit of a spotted cloud sky, it looks pretty interesting. I kind of enjoy that. It's one of the scenes I kind of think is very picturesque. This section over here to the left of the house, if you want to point it that way, is very, very dark. This is the sort of dark where if I'm taking out trash to those trash bins around the corner, that I'm pretty careful about where I walk. I'm also careful about not walking too quickly. I don't want to disturb any of the nature that might be hanging out over there. I have run across a few possums over there. No raccoons just yet. My fear is there's going to be a snake because I don't like snakes. Snakes kind of freak me out. Kind of a funny thing that I've always held on to my entire life is snakes just kind of give me the heebie-jeebies. As I set it down here on this is just kind of giving you an opportunity to have a still shot. You see that flicker on the Caddx camera on the left. That is probably due to the fact that that side is connected to a VTX. I have noticed that every once in a while that I'll see a flicker. It's probably something to do with power. If you're curious about the board, if you haven't seen it, I've got a really old power distribution unit that we used to use in quads years ago. Well, you still do on some, but mainly it's different builds, 5-inch builds. We usually use 4-in-1s now. But it's got this power distribution board, and it's got a 5-volt and a 12-volt output. And then I have the 5-volt output going to the RunCam DVR, and then the RunCam DVR generally powers the camera. If the camera requires more than 5 volts, so it requires 5.5 or more, then I power it with the 12-volt lead off of the power distribution unit. And then I have the yellow or signal wire going back to the RunCam DVR. I do have a buck boost converter on the VTX side to try to minimize any play that VTX may have in the power, but I've noticed some flickers on that side on the last few tests, and I presume it's because that VTX power is at play in there. But it gives you a pretty good idea still you can get to see the image, and as we walk into the garage, you get to see kind of the different colors. All right, we're to our daytime footage just for good measure. Wanted to make sure that if you didn't watch the other videos, you had an opportunity to watch this. This is traditional flying time. I do believe this is about 5 or 6 o'clock, so not high noon by any stretch. It might be 4, but you can see the sun isn't necessarily directly overhead, so I presume it's kind of later in the day, but it's still full sun. You'll see later on in this test, after I get done doing the cloth test, that cloud up there kind of moves over our sun, so it kind of skews the lighting as far as, if you're out flying, the same thing's going to happen. But it was something when I was out there, I noticed it, and then you'll see me point the camera back at the sun as the cloud starts to cover it up. Just another opportunity to see how the cameras respond in different lighting situations. For me, these are the best 2 Nano cameras on the market. They may not fit every scenario that someone's looking for, but in the camera testing for the Nanos that I've done, these 2 look the best. They look the truest. The colorations are nice and bright and clear. They have great low light performance, so you can fly at night, either one. I really don't think you'll go wrong with either one. It just comes down to your vendor of preference having your camera when you want to buy your camera, or if you have an affinity for one brand or another because of a past experience that you have. I think it's really going to come down to that. But if you see differences, please call them out down in the comments section. I encourage everyone who watches my videos to leave their own comments. I think it's good because they don't need to, anyone watching the video doesn't need to just listen to me, in my opinion. There are many opinions out there, and they are all valid, and many of you have experiences far greater than what I do when it comes to cameras, and you have knowledge of how camera lenses work and how all the exposures work and all the different facets of cameras that make them operate and give us the visual that we're looking for. So that's all useful information, and I think anybody who's really wanting to dig into do their homework should not only just watch the video, but they should also be reading those comments. I think it's also very valuable for the vendors to read the comments as well. That way they get an idea of those people who are the part of the market that cares the most about cameras. Those are the people that are going to be commenting, in my opinion. If you think most of the cameras are pretty good, you just go for the cheapest camera or you go for the brand you like, you might not leave a comment. You might just say thanks for the video or something like that. But several of you do break down what you see, and I do appreciate that. You see that cloud is kind of pushed over, so I'm kind of pointing the camera at the cloud as the sun was behind the cloud, and it's starting to peek out here a little bit as that cloud starts to move by, and I rescan the neighborhood. Those clouds are nice and puffy and white. Typical summer day. Didn't cook up a storm or anything this particular day. We have had a lot of late evening storms. They're actually early morning storms, and sometimes they wake the kids up, especially the youngest one. They fear the storms. They fear the unknown. They don't understand that their lives are going to see thousands of storms over the course of the many years they live, and it's unlikely anything bad will ever happen. So, anywho, I think that's a pretty good view. We saw the dark, we saw the semi-dark, we saw the full daytime, we did our light testing. So I think I've exhausted these cameras, and I'm sure you guys are getting tired of watching these sort of camera comparisons, but they're things that are called for in the comments, and when I have the items to do the comparison, I do try to do those things so that you can grade things out and decide which camera you want to go for. We wrap up here at the garage, just staring at the framework of the garage so you can get an idea if there's any fisheye or distortion that you don't approve of. Step inside the garage and we get another view from in the full shade out to the sunny portion. Just another lighting change, just another environment change. See how the cameras respond, see how the visual is. If you haven't already, please leave your comments down below what you think. What do you think of the pricing? What do you think of the image? What do you think of the performance? Near sundown, sundown, full bright. You know, what do you think of these two cameras? Have you already bought one of these cameras and your experiences with them, good, bad, and otherwise? If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, otherwise, please let me know in that section down below. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.